Hey everyone, I'm going to be breaking down my Pros versus Joes 2014 draft. And let me tell you what this contest is. It's run by the FFPC and it's organized by Darren Armani, the Fantasy Bojo, which is it's an awesome contest. It's really cool that they do this, but basically um, they take 36 pros and 36 Joes. So 36 writers in the fantasy industry, 36 people that run a website or are in some type of business of fantasy. And then they take 36 people who are Joes who play in the FFP's main event contest. So high stakes players. They draw names from who registers early, and we are put together in 6 different leagues and we face off. It's a best ball league, which is important to know. So there's no setting of lineups or anything, and your optimal players, whoever scores the most that week, that would fit in your lineup, who would give you the best lineup, is put in place. So you're looking to kind of rack up these points every single week. The other things is every single league it goes from pro to Joe. It differentiates. So in our league, the number one pick was a Joe, the number two pick was a pro, number three a Joe, number four a pro, etc., etc. And it is a 1.5 PPR for tight end league. So you have PPR for running backs and receivers, and 1.5 PPR for tight ends. So tight ends are a lot more valuable and become a necessity if you want to win. You have to hit on the tight end. So that adds kind of a new element to it. So I was asked back for the third year in a row. I'm very thankful to Darren, to the FFP, for bringing me back because this is one of the most fun drafts I have, and it kind of kicks off the fantasy season in mid to late July. In the last 2 years, I've been kind of middle of the pack. 2012, I was 29th out of 72. I did pretty well, and I had a good year going. I had Jimmy Graham really carried me for a while, and then towards the end, it kind of fell off a little bit with some injuries. Last year, I got unlucky. I ended up 36th of 72, so right in the middle. I was directly in the middle. I drafted Dennis Pitta, tight end, and that didn't work out. I had Jimmy Graham again, but then he had a good year, but there were some games there where he didn't score very much. I had some running back injuries. It just did not go very well as a whole. So that was kind of in my years. So this year my strategy was to go in and really to try to swing for the fences, try to win this thing, try to get in the top 10 or get in the bottom 10. Instead of staying in the middle, I'll take all or nothing here. I'll completely flop or succeed was kind of my goal. But well, let me break down my draft a little bit and go through and explain my thought process. And going in, I was the third draft, so I looked at the last 2 nights and where some of these players were going, and trying to determine who I should pick in what rounds. What would be the best way to do that. And so certain rounds I had certain targets, or I had some positional targets, but a lot of it came down to my first round pick of who I was going to get, and I was picking sixth. So the 1-6, I usually like to be a little bit closer to the turn. I like 3, I like 10, which that way you can kind of look at what the next two guys are doing and kind of plan. I feel like you can get some good value there. But looking at 6, I feel like I was going to get a top tier player in the first round and have a good shot in the second round at getting a solid player. So my kind of thought process was, well, Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy, Adrian Peterson will be gone. I'd love Jimmy Graham to fall to me and take him for a third year in a row in a 1.5 PPR, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So that leaves kind of Matt Forte, which would be fine, or I could take a receiver. And actually, I was planning on not taking Calvin Johnson. I was going to take Dez Bryant if you follow me. I was swinging for the fences, and I think Dez, who scored less than 1 point per game difference between him and Calvin last year. I think that could change for Dez's favor this year. Well, didn't quite work out that way. And Jamal Charles went first. Matt Forte got auto picked for the second team, who wanted LaShawn McCoy, but ended up with Forte. And so LaShawn McCoy goes third. Jimmy Graham goes fourth. And then Calvin Johnson goes 5th. So I actually got Adrian Peterson at the 1-6, and I leapt to the board and took him there, not expecting him to be there. So that kind of changed it. I thought I was going to get a receiver, and I thought I was going to kind of work running back in the 3rd round, work running back a little bit, maybe sacrifice that position a little bit. And so this draft kind of changed. That 1st round pick really changed me and what I wanted to do. So going in the 2nd round, I was looking at what receivers could be there. Is there going to be a Julio Jones or Brandon Marshall that kind of falls down the board? Alshon Jeffrey's a guy I like a lot too that I was considering, but really looking at the depth of receiver versus the depth at running back, I felt if I didn't take a running back here, and especially because my plan in the 3rd round was to take Jordan Cameron, the tight end from Cleveland, if I didn't take a running back here, the running back well could very easily be dried up by the 4th and 5th round, and I already had a wide receiver target in the 4th round, but I'll get to that. So I went with running back. I went with Le'Veon Bell over Alshon Jeffrey, and I feel comfortable with that, especially with the way my team turned out. So in the 3rd round, I did get my target in Jordan Cameron because I wanted a top tight end and felt like I like Jordan Cameron even more than Julius Thomas this year, who went at the 2-8. So Julius Thomas went 2-8. I got Jordan Cameron 3-6. I'm happy with that as him being really the only major pass catcher in Cleveland. I think he'll get a ton of passes. So I wanted to kind of lock down that position. I can kind of ignore that unless there is value. There was a player I'm targeting later I don't get to that I didn't get tight end, but I kind of hold that up. In the 4th round, I knew who I was taking. I knew I had it penciled in from a little while ago. It's actually a player said, hey, if I have to take him in the 3rd, I would take him. That's Cordero Patterson, the wide receiver from Minnesota, 2nd-year wide receiver. This is my swing for the fences pick. I didn't really expect to have him as a wide receiver 1. I thought in the 1st or 2nd round I would be taking a wide receiver somewhere, but Patterson ends up being my wide receiver 1, and it could blow up in my face. So with that, I felt, okay, if I take him as a wide receiver 1, I can sure up a wide receiver 3. That's more of a sure thing instead of taking all risk with my receiving core. But I really think he's on pace to blow up in North Turner offense, and I'm happy to. 2 of my first 4 picks are Vikings, which is not a team that you would expect, but I think Adrian Peterson, Cordero Patterson could both put up really big fantasy numbers, and I think the Vikings could play well. I mean, that division, the defenses aren't great. It's not necessarily a great defensive division right now, Chicago, Green Bay, Detroit. So I think both these guys could play well this season. So in the 5th round, I kind of figured out I got to take a receiver here. We're through 4. I only have 1 receiver. I have to take someone. I get to my pick, and the guys that are available: Michael Crabtree, Mike Wallace, Torrey Smith, Emmanuel Sanders. No one I really love. No one that really stands out to me and says this is a really good wide receiver too. This is a player that could really blow up. Who was sitting there for me was Bishop Sankey, the rookie running back out of Washington that went to the Tennessee Titans. And he was a player I'd penciled in the 3rd round as a possibility. Him, C.J. Spiller, and Doug Martin were all players that I was going to look at in the 3rd round. At running back, once again, assuming that I went wide receiver in the 1st, then I would need running backs. So he's sitting there in the 5th, 2 rounds later than I had penciled him in as a possibility. So I have to take him. I mean, that's just value. I think by late August, early September, if he looks good in preseason and camp, he's going to go in the 2nd, 3rd round. He's going to be the lead running back for them. And there's going to be some type of split with Sean Green or whatever, but we saw what Ryan Matthews did with Ken Wisenhunt last year. I think Sankey could do the same thing and do even better with a great offensive line. So I had to take him. I didn't want to take this many running backs early. This was not really what I wanted to do. I looked back at last year's champion Chris Banks, who only drafted 4 running backs in 26 rounds and won the whole thing. And he pretty much crushed it. I think he won by 200 points or so over Jim Day. So I didn't want to take a ton of running backs, but I figure, hey, look, I got my 3 I got a target in a couple rounds I want to take as an RB4, and then I'll kind of be done with the running back position for a long time in this draft. So I took Sankey. Then in the sixth, now I got to take a receiver. It doesn't it really doesn't matter. There's no other position I could take. I got to take a receiver. And I was happy to get T.Y. Hilton there in the sixth round, who I think is going to be the primary target still in Indianapolis over Hakeem Nicks. And we've seen 2 years of production for T.Y. Hilton, so I feel pretty comfortable about that. So as a wide receiver, too, I think Hilton's solid. And then I came back in the seventh, and like I mentioned before, I wanted a solid wide receiver 3. So I had to kind of get that guy here. Now, there was a couple choices for me in the seventh round. Do I go solid or do I go with upside again? One of the players I was looking at in kind of seventh, eighth was Terrence Williams of Dallas. I think Dallas is going to have a really good offense this year. So, I mean, that'd be an upside play, which is you kind of need to win this thing. But then Marcus Colston's also there, who's still going to be the number one receiver for New Orleans. So I know he can produce at a best ball level. I think we saw last year he struggled early, but then came back late with some great games. So if you come back late with some great games, then that helps your team in best ball, and that's okay. So I ended up going with Marcus Colston. Maybe I'll regret that. Maybe I should have taken Terrence Williams. I don't think there's really anyone else. Eric Decker actually was the other guy I was considering there, who I almost took. Eric Decker. I was actually very close to taking Decker, but I went with Colston. Kind of pull myself back. So maybe I'll regret not taking Williams or Decker over Colston, but that's how it worked. Now I had a target in the 8th round going in. Actually, I had a target in the 7th round and the 8th round going in. That I thought this is kind of the area where guys are going to blow up that you can get at a value. The 7th round, my target going in was Bernard Pierce, the running back for Baltimore. This was before the Ray Rice suspension was announced. So I thought Ray Rice gets suspended for about 4 games, and if Bernard Pierce comes in, he fits Kubiak's system so well that he will come in and kind of show that he can be the lead back and take it from Ray Rice. And if that happens, you get an RB1 as an RB3, or in my team's case, an RB4, could be very solid. Now I had 3 running backs by that point, and so I said, I gotta wait. I gotta kind of pass Bernard Pierce. I'm not gonna get him. Then the 8th round, my target, and it's one of my favorite breakout players this year, is the San Diego Chargers tight end Ladarius Green. And I really liked him pre-draft. I've actually been pretty successful at evaluating tight ends pre-draft. I really liked Jimmy Graham. Really liked Julius Thomas. Really liked Jordan Cameron, not quite as much. So that maybe that was a miss for me. But Ladarius Green's a player that I kind of put up there from a physical talent standpoint. It wasn't that far behind Jimmy Graham coming out of school. So I really want to get him. And when the 7th round hit, I said, I'm not going to get Pierce. I'll take Colston. I'll take a receiver. But I'll still take Green in the 8th. Because you can play that tight end, you can play in your flex spot. So if you have 2 flex spots, so 1.5 PPR, you get a good tight end 2, it could really work out for you. And ultimately, he went before me. He went before my 8th round pick. Going to scoutpro.com, and whose team I really like, and that was kind of a steal. It was a couple picks before mine, and when he went, I was like, man, I was freaking out because then I was looking at Zach Ertz. He went 2 picks later, so now tight end's kind of out the window. But Bernard Pierce was sitting there in the 8th round, so all right, I'll take my guy. I'll bypass running back for a long time, and I bypass running back for the next 10 rounds, and I'll just take Bernard Pierce there. So I kind of once again, I went into this draft thinking I'm going to take 2, maybe 3 running backs in the first 10 rounds. I took 4, and that is a big difference. So in the 9th round, I'm thinking maybe I go receiver. I'm kind of looking at tight end at round 10, hoping that Heath Miller, Dwayne Allen, those type of players there, they both went in the 9th before my pick, so they went early, but neither of those players were taken by the 10:06 in the past 2 drafts. So tight ends are getting pushed up the board here, and quite frankly, by this point, a lot of the quarterbacks are still on the board. My 9th round pick, Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, Tony Romo, Cam Newton, Jay Cutler, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson. They're all still out there. So that was intriguing to me. Yeah, is that right? Yes. Yeah, Russell Wilson's still out there. So I felt like I can keep waiting on quarterback. I kind of had penciled in the 11th round to take my quarterback. I was targeting Tony Romo, so that I'm going to bypass him in the 9th and 10th. So the 9th, I took DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver out of Houston. I don't think Andre Johnson's going to hold out or anything, but I do think DeAndre Hopkins is going to provide solid wide receiver 4 numbers, have a couple bigger games. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick will like him too. So I like that pick, and I'm a big fan of his. And really over the other wide receiver options that went after him, Danny Amendola, Kenny Stills, Dwayne Bowe. Maybe that would have been nice, I guess, but I think Hopkins has more upside that Dwayne Bowe has. And after that, Tavon Austin. I don't really want Tavon Austin. So I think DeAndre Hopkins is a nice pick there. Now, after that pick, 4 quarterbacks go in a row. Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, Cam Newton, and Tony Romo all get drafted. So, all right, well, I'm not taking a tight end in the 10th round. And really, I need a tight end too, very badly at this point. I like my foursome running backs. I like my foursome wide receivers. I think I can still get a good quarterback in round 11, where I plan on taking a quarterback before the draft. So I got to take a tight end. It's coming, my pick's coming up, and I'm looking at the tight ends, and all these guys that I was hoping for: Dwayne Allen gone, Heath Miller gone, Charles Clay gone. There's not much out there. So I go back, I look at the night before's draft, or what other tight ends were going around this area, try to get a spark of some names that I could be missing. And the one that stood out for me was Garrett Graham for the Houston Texans. He's going to be the H-back in that Bill O'Brien offense. So he's got to play a tight end role in an offense where the tight end has been productive. So I went with him in the 10th. It was a little bit early. But with the tight end run that has been happening, I had to pull that trigger. I don't know if I'll regret that or not. The other guy I was looking at was Justin Hunter, the wide receiver for Tennessee, who went at the end of the 11th round. He went very late. But if I had passed on Graham and taken Hunter, and Graham went, and then maybe in the 12th round I target a tight end. I don't see who I would have gotten. I don't see Travis Kelce was best case scenario, so I don't know, and that's risk. So I think I had to do it. Now around 11, I'm taking my quarterback. Quarterbacks now are kind of flying off the board. Around 10, we did not have any in the 10th round. Then Colin Kaepernick goes before me, and so I wanted Romo. He went in the 9th. I ended up taking Jay Cutler, quarterback for the Bears, figuring that if he stays healthy, he could put up a top 5 season. And because of the health factor, I'm going to draft 4 quarterbacks and make sure I have some backups there. So I'm going to do that pretty quickly. I'm going to get all my quarterbacks here pretty soon before the well dries up for them. In the 12th round, I ended up taking Riley Cooper, the wide receiver from Philadelphia, which I was very happy with getting him in the 12th. He had a very successful season last year. It's going to be a high-tempo offense. And I was actually deciding between him or the rookie Jordan Matthews for Philly. And I went with the veteran. He's a wide receiver 5. So I feel like, I have some upside plays with Cordero, with DeAndre Hopkins, T.Y. Hilton. I can take a player like Riley Cooper, who's probably going to put up a couple big games, but not be too useful for me past that. In the 13th, I want to keep going with those quarterbacks. I take Eli Manning, who I think has to have a bounce back year. I think people are overlooking his potential. It was between him and Carson Palmer for me, which I think I like both, but I'm going to go with Eli because I do think Cutler, I have that upside and downside. I feel like Eli has a little bit higher floor and should have some solid games. The 14th round, I took Tyler Eifert, who I was actually considering in the 12th, 13th range. I don't know how successful he'll really be this year, but as a tight end 3, if I can get a game or 2 of him in best ball, I'll be pretty happy with that pick. And then 15th and 16th rounds, I go back-to-back quarterback to finish out my quarterbacks. And now I want upside. I have Cutler, I have Eli. Eli's got to stay healthy. He's going to be good. Let's just swing for the fences. If we hit on a quarterback that runs, that passes, that's really good, then I'll be money. And so I went with E.J. Manuel for Buffalo and Geno Smith for the New York Jets. So that's upside. There's downside too. Michael Vick could take over that job. EJ Manuel could stink again, but if one of them turns out to be really good, if one of them, if Geno Smith, his best games, if he does that every single week, he's gonna be my starting quarterback some weeks. If EJ Manuel starts running the ball and running for touchdowns and throwing to Sammy Watkins a ton, he's gonna be my quarterback a couple weeks, and that's all you want here. In the 17th round, and I'm starting to kind of eye up the defenses and kickers a little bit. So the 17th round, I take Bryce Brown, the running back for the Buffalo Bills. So that's my RB5 right there. And I figure this is an upside play. I took Bryce Brown last year in this format. Didn't work out so well. For Philly last year, I thought that he would get some carries and have some production. And he's talented. He goes to the Bills, and he's having a good camp. So I'll take a shot on him. Maybe he gives me zeros every week. But as an RB5, I'd rather take that upside shot, as you'll see later with my RB6. After him, in the 18th round, not quite ready to take a defense or kicker yet. I think we're going to start seeing him go off the board soon. So there's kind of one receiver that stands out to me, and that's Rod Streeter for Oakland, who I think could be their number 2 receiver behind James Jones. I think he could have a couple big weeks. I think Oakland could be better than people think. So, I'll take him there as a wide receiver 6, and that'll, I plan on taking 7 and maybe one more upside swing at receiver, but I think Streeter's fine. So then I go into defense and kicker mode, which I'll just list off. So Houston defense, I took in the 19th, 20th round, took Mason Crosby, the kicker for the Packers. 21st round, I took the Jets defense. 22nd round, took the Bills defense. 23rd round, took Sebastian Janikowski for Oakland. 24th round, I took Sean Sweesom for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the 25th, I took the Oakland Raiders defense. There's like 2 or 3 defenses left, and I went with Oakland over Jacksonville. So I wanted to actually get 4 of each, but the kickers ran out, and there's actually people that took kickers after I was done. Sweesom was one of the last ones there. It was Sweesom, Mike Nugent, Caleb Sturgis, Dan Carpenter, Josh Brown, and Connor Barth was a guy I was looking at in the 26th round. He got taken. And all these kickers just went in the last 2 rounds. People that really waited on kicker had to take backup kickers. Someone took Kerry Spear. I think Jim Day took Kerry Spear, the backup kicker for the Eagles. It's Giorgio Tavecchio went the backup kicker for the Detroit. So, if you didn't get a kicker, people were taking, you have 12 teams, so everyone can't get 3 kickers. So if you take 4 kickers, someone's going to be left in the dust. So, same thing with defenses, right? There's only 32 defenses. So if everyone wants 3, some people are going to be left out. So I went with 4 defenses and 3 kickers. And I know that's weird, but I feel like this is the strategy. I don't know. I wish I had the time and the know-how to really analyze best ball formats and see how this differs or how this helps or hurts you or the difference and all this stuff. Because I feel like, hey, with 4 defenses, you can get that extra week or 2 of an extra 5 points, an extra 10 points. That could help you. It could make a difference. With kickers, you can get a guy hurt. I think last year I had a kicker who was out for the season. I think it was Dustin Hopkins for the Bills. Got knocked out for the season. You're screwed. You lose. If I had a week where my other 2 kickers had bad weeks, you're not going to make it up. You're not going to win this contest. So, you have to invest in 3 or 4 of those, especially now with the 28 rounds. It gives you some flexibility to do that. Well, I still have 3 more rounds to go, and I was going to swing for the fences with all 3 of these picks. You might as well. If they don't do anything, so what? And one of the interesting pieces to me of the last 2 drafts I was looking at is that Marcus Lattimore was not drafted in either of these drafts, which interested me. Now, I don't really think Marcus Lattimore is going to do a whole lot this year for San Francisco at running back. I think it's going to be Frank Gore. I think it's going to be Carlos Hyde. I think it's going to be Kendall Hunter. But if Marcus Lattimore gets in the game, if there's an injury to Frank Gore and Lattimore shows he can play, and we know that he has the physical talent, at least before the injuries, then, I mean, that could be a steal. No one took him in the last 2 drafts. So I said, I got to take, if he's there, I have to take him, not only for my own sanity, where I think he could blow up, but if he does blow up and no one in the first 2 drafts took the guy, then I get those points. No one gets those points in the other leagues, and that gives me a big advantage. So I took him in the 26th round. I mean, I was surprised by some of the running backs that went ahead of Marcus Lattimore. I mean, Mike Tolbert went ahead of Marcus Lattimore in the same round. Latavius Murray went ahead of Marcus Lattimore. Yeah, I mean, give me the upside of Lattimore all day over those guys. And then 27th, 28th round, I'm just kind of looking for upside. 27th round, I took Luke Wilson, tight end of Seattle, who had some decent games last year. I think he's better than Zach Miller at this point. Could be the starting tight end for Seattle. If you get that in the 27th round, even on a team that does not pass the ball. Now, I was kind of looking at maybe I could take Andre Holmes. Maybe I could take, Lance Moore. Like, maybe I could take someone to kind of work with what I have already on my team, but I thought Luke Wilson would be pretty solid. In the 28th round, I took Derek Rogers, wide receiver for the Colts. I don't know if he's going to be more than their 4th wide receiver, but I figure I have T.Y. Hilton. So if Wayne goes down again, if Hilton goes down, I need a piece of this Colts wide receiver core to replace that. Maybe it'll be Derek Rogers. I'm not even the biggest Derek Rogers fan. Once again, which a couple of these players, I don't necessarily love these players, but I think the situation is good enough, and I know the talent is good enough that he might be able to do something. So that's my team. As a whole, let's kind of break it down. Quarterback-wise, I have Cutler, Eli, E.J. Manuel, and Geno Smith. And, I think it's solid for not taking one in the first 10 rounds. I think I have a solid group with some upside and some stability mixed in. So I think it's fine for like a streaming tight end type of thing. Running backs, I really like my running backs. I think Adrian Peterson, Le'Veon Bell, and Bishop Sankey are going to carry them. I think if Bernard Pierce, Bryce Brown, and Marcus Lattimore hit, then I'll be set. But I think with those top 3 for most weeks, I should have my 2 starters and a flex position come out of my running backs. So receiver, I need a little bit of help. Cordero Patterson, I think he's going to blow up. And I think for me to win my league, he has to blow up. And I do think T.Y. Hilton's going to continue on the same path. I think Marcus Colston will be solid. DeAndre Hopkins, I feel like the ceiling might be a little bit limiting to him, but I do like him. And I could see Riley Cooper having another good year. I could see Rod Streeter give me a couple games. So if I can get, if I can just get the solid starters, 3 starters out of this receiving core every week, then I'll be good. Then tight end, Jordan Cameron has to carry me. I don't expect Garrett Graham or Luke Wilson or Tyler Eifert to blow up. If they do, great. If Garrett Graham has a Charles Clay type season, that would be awesome. But I think I'll be fine. And defense and kicker. Kicker's a little thin. I think Mason Crosby most weeks will probably be the guy that I'll rely on. But defensively, there's some risk defensively. I think Houston has the talent, but they don't really have the offense to compete. Though I think the division they're in, they could do pretty well. I think the Jets and Bills aren't necessarily in too tough of spots. I think they both have talent. Oakland, if I can get them to start a week or 2 for me, then I'll be happy with Oakland's 25th round pick. So I think I have a solid team. Maybe not quite enough upside. Maybe I needed to do a little bit more upside swinging to win this thing, but I think I do have a shot. Now, if you win your league of 12 teams, you get a main event team for the FFP, which is close to $3,000 worth, which is awesome. And if you win the whole thing, no pro has won this whole thing yet. So I hope by that I get to do it. But let me know your thoughts on my team. You can tweet at me at Shane P. Hallam. And check out Pros vs. Joes. You can go to the FFPC, and there'll be 3 more these next couple days, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I believe. So you can check those out at youtube.com/NFL. You can listen to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on Blog Talk Radio, who Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak will be broadcasting the draft. So thanks everyone for checking it out, and I hope you like my team.